This is a lesson on the right hand exercises from my Volume 2 method book, and the link for the book is in the YouTube info section there. So the technique section of the book is the final section, and there's really just two parts to it: right hand exercises and then left hand synchronization exercises. So this video is on right hand exercises. So I'm just going to go through some of the exercises and give you some tips for each one. I won't play through every single thing because it's not really necessary, but I will address just some small concerns about each of the exercises that I've included. The other thing I would keep in mind is that you don't need to practice every single exercise in order every day. You might want to integrate this very slowly. I've put them in an order that I think is progressive, or at least most important to the book. So like the first exercise is important to the other sections of the book. So you should start with the first exercise. And then as you progress through, you'll develop other skills that will also come in handy for everything. But don't feel the need that you have to work through all the right hand exercises every day or something like that. That would be an unreasonable amount of material. Just kind of go through each one until you feel like you've got a solid handle on it. And then you can start tracking your speed and goals with a metronome and whatnot. So the first right hand exercise that I would like to look at is the right hand alternation on open strings. This has been in other books, but this, my Volume 1 book, but in this book, it goes through all the strings. So it's just I am walking or alternation through the strings. Make sure your fingers are going into the palm like this, through the thumb. I like to rest my thumb on the bass string when I get up to the fourth string about, just for security and keep the hand in one solid place. Of course, also practice it with rest stroke. Notice that my fingers are kind of traveling in this direction. Because the fingers extend out that way, and also this high E string, if you play down this way, it's gonna be very bright and naily sounding. You want to go more tasto, so just follow the extension of the fingers out this way so that the top string isn't too bright. So rest stroke and free stroke, you can practice with staccato or legato articulation. Staccato is just, you'll just put the next available finger back on the string. Of course, it doesn't work on the open string that you leave. That's okay. It just trains right hand security and accuracy. If your finger is resting on the string before it has to play, it'll play the right string. You can try accenting the first note of each group. That's a good way to keep track of the groups. You could also try a rest stroke on the first note of each group. Of course, you can't do it on the sixth string, but so if you're doing a group of two, that would mean every I finger might be accented. Or if you start with M, every M finger would be accented or done with the rest stroke. The groups of three are the best ones because then the accent kind of alternates between the fingers. I, M, I, M, I, M. So that's essentially guitar playing. We don't play with I, M on the lowest strings that much, but it's an important skill to have. And make sure that you're also practicing with M, A, and A, M as well. Let's move on to the two voice right hand patterns. These are very important to solo pieces in this book because you often have two voice playing, so these are great. So still we're practicing alternating these fingers, but we're just adding the thumb in that. So logical to practice this stuff because this is essentially how we use the hands on the guitar. I put a little note about trying out a rest stroke with the thumb. All that means is that the fingers will play free stroke and the thumb will play a rest stroke, a light rest stroke. Very secure way of playing, right? You can see that the thumb is resting on that string. whole hand very secure. You might find this to be a very difficult thing to do at first, to do free stroke with fingers and rest stroke with the thumb. My recommendation is make sure the thumb rest stroke is very light and that you can glide through that string very easily. Otherwise, it's too hard to do. And if you can't do it after trying a significant amount of time, just come back to it later. Just keep practicing with a nice secure hand position and come back to it later when you're feeling a little bit more confident. But keep that thumb rest stroke nice and light so you can glide through the string easily. Awkward string crossings. An awkward string crossing is when instead of using the finger closest to the string, you have to use a finger and kind of stretch out over a string. So if you play I, M on the third and second string, that's very ergonomic. The I finger is close to this string, the M finger is close to that string. It's just naturally close because of the position of our hand. If we play M, I though, the I finger is having to reach over the M and extend to that upper string. That's called an awkward string crossing. Now, awkward string crossings happen all the time. If you play scales, you can see whenever you have to use your I finger, if you start with I, your I finger will have to do an awkward string crossing all the time. So it's an essential skill that you have to know. In this case, we are including it with the thumb. So number one on awkward string crossings is very easy. It's the ergonomic normal playing. Or if you're doing the rest stroke. Number two is the awkward string crossing. In this case, I is reaching over. Most important thing is that you don't change your hand position too much, whether you're doing the normal one, number one, or number two. Don't change your hand position. Keep your hand position very secure and just make sure the fingers are doing all the work. If you can't do that, then just make sure you double check your guitar position because you should be able to do that and you have to be able to do that in pieces because we alternate fingers all the time and we have to change strings, so awkward string crossings happen all the time. So we must become comfortable with them. Same thing with the MA group, it's exactly the same concept. But I think those are very important exercises. Basic arpeggio patterns with P-I-M-A. These could be extended and made much more complicated, but I've included just 6 patterns that use up all the combinations of the right hand that start with the thumb. This is just a good idea just to get arpeggios going. There's 2 ways you can practice this, and it's using the word planting. And what that means is that one way we could practice it would be to put all of our fingers down and then play. And then all of our fingers down, then all of our fingers down, then all of our fingers down. That's a very secure way of playing, and that's called full planting. You're planting all the fingers. It's not as legato though, right? So if you do sequential planting, that's just planting the next available finger. So when I play the I finger plants on the next note. Then when I play I, the M finger plants on the next note. When I play M, the A finger plants on the next note. When I play A, the thumb plants on the next note. That's called sequential planting. So you're planting the next finger on the next string just before you need it. It's kind of simultaneous action of 2 fingers. Notice it kind of looks robotic or clockwork down here because there's always one finger on the string. This accomplishes 2 things. One thing, it accomplishes security. If your finger is on the string before it has to play, it'll definitely hit the right string. So that's security and accuracy. You're not going to accidentally hit a wrong string if you're on that string already. The other thing it'll do is it builds up speed because if your finger is in the right place before it has to play, then it's ready to play that note. And of course, then you can also practice without planting, just as legato as possible. And then you're going to go through all the different combinations. So number 2. There's other ways of planting, by the way, but I don't think it's necessary at this point, and I've already made videos on the website about that, which you can check out. At this time, I would just practice full plants, sequential plants, and then just legato as possible. Arpeggios in two voices. This is essentially the same as the previous exercise, except the thumb and the first finger, or the thumb and one of the fingers will play at the same time in two voices. So number one, for example. So just keep the hand nice and secure in a good hand position and just activate those fingers. Number two it's the same idea. Keep it all very still and just keep everything in the fingers. Okay, selected Giuliani exercises. So after going through some of those open string arpeggios, you should have some good technique in your hand. And then the Giuliani arpeggios from his Opus 1 just offer the same skills that we just covered, except integrating the left hand with some chord shapes. It only uses two chords. It uses a C chord and a G7 chord, sometimes with the G, sometimes without. And then it just goes through that. So the first one, for example, on the final chords, I sweep my thumb over two of the bass notes because otherwise you would run out of the right number of fingers. If you want, you can just leave out the inner E on the fourth string and just play. It doesn't really matter, we're just doing this for arpeggio practice. When you go to number two, you can practice this with the full plants like we talked about. But it's a little jagged, but it's good training for your hand. Or you can practice it with sequential plants like we talked about. So preparing the next available finger on the string before it has to play. There's not that much to talk about with these Giuliani arpeggios though. It's the same two chords, that C chord followed by G7, in every single example. And the right hand pattern just changes. So if you've already gone over the exercises I did on open strings, as long as you can play those two chords smoothly, then you're not going to have a problem. Some people have troubles switching chords. So like I just did. My only piece of advice for that is you have to get that bass note first. Once you get that bass note, you have a split second to get the other fingers as they come. So just make sure you really aim for connecting that next bass note, and then once that's connected, you can get the rest of the notes. Don't feel the need to have to jump the whole hand shape like that. Even though it almost looks like that, you can see that my second finger went down before the other fingers, just a split second before, in order to make the transition from one chord to the next as smooth as possible. The last right hand exercise in this one is the speed and stability exercise. There's lots of these in many books, but let me just explain one thing. It's the staccato. The staccato is really important because the staccato articulation really helps you to, well, it's the same thing as sequential planting. You're putting the next available finger down on the string, which trains it to be in the right place before it has to play. So that it's ready to play, so that helps with speed, but it's also in the right place, so that's a secure way of playing, right? A very accurate way of playing. And although I've notated it just with IM, make sure you also practice MI and MA and AM combinations. Unlike the speed exercises in Tennant's book, for example, I don't repeat any fingers after eighth notes. I just use IM alternation the whole time. So just make sure that you're always just switching to the next available finger. We'll just quickly go through it. course, practice that also with MA combinations as well. And the best way to work on this stuff is to be able to play it very slowly, and then get your metronome out, keep track of what speed you can do it at confidently, and every time you can do a new speed, just cross it off so you can see the progress that you're getting faster and faster. But make sure that you're keeping it very in control and very accurate. Don't rush it. Speed comes with accuracy and relaxation. So if you're cranking the metronome all the time, I don't think that's a good idea. I think the best idea is to take it very, very slowly and just let lots of time go by before upping that metronome speed. Maybe stay on one metronome speed for an entire week and then just click it up one notch for the next week. Even if you think you can go faster, just keep it low so that you're building a good foundation of technique. Thanks very much. In the next video, we'll go over the left hand exercises.